Welcome to Team Perry's Step Out of Line podcast, featuring co-hosts Perry and Lori Finkelstein. For our podcast, Perry's voice is represented by a communication device, or rather AI technology, to ensure that all can hear and understand her speech. Together, they explore, meet, and share inspirational stories with guests who have made a positive impact in today's world. This podcast resonates with our hope to make this world a better place one step at a time through love, acceptance, and uplifting conversations.
Wow, that's a big question. In so many ways, I relate to that. Just as a woman, as a Jewish woman, as an American Jewish woman, I'm a survivor of DV, domestic violence. And the ex was abusive in all the ways. And how I stepped out of line was he had been abusing me for years, but it was the gaslighting and the subtle abuse, that you just think you need to shut up and put up with. And it came to a point where I couldn't take it anymore. And it was simultaneous with the fact that I began to notice strange things with my children. They were babies at the time. And it all sort of came to a head. And then it was like a couple of weeks of investigation. And then within 24 hours, I was gone. Literally, I packed up pillowcases with our clothes to get out because he wouldn't leave the house. So that's how I stepped out of line. And what I realized, it's been 15 years. I was married, 17, together 18. And it sounds like a lot of time. And it is. But time is so evasive. For me, it's just been one long experience, like one long journey. And there's been so much growth and so much personal realization and growth and maturity, emotional and professional. But the most difficult thing when it first happened that hurt me so hard was, and this relates to stepping out of line, is how many mothers don't do anything and how many people stay quiet. And I remember police detectives and Department of Social Services, Child and Protective Services, I remember all of them telling me how mothers don't do anything, children don't talk because they're so threatened. And I remember saying, I really can't hear that right now because I was so in this turmoil, right? In this hurricane of emotions. It was like, that was like one last thing I needed to have put on my shoulders because my instinct went to, I need to go and save those babies. Right. I mean, in a very concise nutshell, that's how I stepped out of line. And part of the emotional growth and emotional maturity in continuing stepping out of line is finding my voice. It was always there. I've been reintroduced to the little girl that I was. I have pictures of me as a little girl just stepping out of line. Oh my God, I just got to chill. I have a picture of me where my mom is holding my hand and I'm literally pulling like this, going, no, I want to be here. I want to be in the camera, Wow, that's kind of profound. Becoming comfortable with speaking out, being direct, and speaking the truth. And so many people like to dance around the truth. So many people are not comfortable with being direct. And you're labeled aggressive, you're labeled abrasive, you're labeled bitchy, you're labeled loud. And I'm like, no, I'm direct. The continuation of stepping out of line is staying true to that newly found emotional maturity.
Which some people never achieve. Like Perry has achieved it in her 20s. I probably was always the way I am, but it took my mother to pass away for me to realize I didn't want to wait until I was 60 something to be crazy and outlandish and voice whatever opinion I had. I was going to start it right then in my 30s. But some people never get to that point where they feel like they can do that. I have sometimes little patience for that when I see that people aren't being true to themselves. You made a whole new life for yourself. Could you tell us about the business that you established?
So part of stepping out of line and why I relate so much to Alex Borstein is I was a theater person. My goal was Broadway. And life happened. In Hebrew, they say yashar, yashar, yamina, straight, straight, go left. Like those are always the directions. And I kind of went straight, straight, right. I kind of veered off the path. Life happened to me. And because I started my business when my son was 6 and my daughter was 3. And I started at farmers markets, selling baked goods, making breakfasts, doing jams, and all the things. And I continued from 2009 until 2012. Between late 2010 through 2012 was the brunt of going through the divorce. I realized I couldn't sustain myself just doing farmers markets. I had grown into 4 or 5 farmers markets that I was doing on rotation. It was kind of this where you just jumped in and learned entrepreneurship and becoming a businesswoman just by diving in. I really knew nothing except that I had this talent for baking, and I love people and I love interacting with people and talking and having that interface with the customers at the farmers market. And it was Rosh Hashanah when I had to stop, and I had just built up like this really sort of following, and they'd all become family. And it was so bittersweet because I had to stop. So I went back to school, which is something I always do when I feel lost or I need to sharpen the saw. I got my early childhood education certification and I started teaching preschool. And because the hours were so coincidental with my children's early childhood as well, because they were in preschool and they were in elementary school. So I was teaching while they were in school, and then I could be a mom, and then I could cater and bake and do all the other extracurricular stuff on the weekends. That went on until 2015, and then I was offered a private chef position at a rehab facility. And I decided to take it, and it was full time. And I thought this was going to really test my skills. Can I deliver for a large amount of people on a daily basis, breakfast, lunch, and dinner? I was in the trenches, right? It was a battleground. This is where I honed my skills. And then after 2.5 years, 3 years of being in a rehab situation environment, it became way too toxic. You learn that rehab isn't really there to rehab. It's just there. It's 28 days and that's it. And I remember talking to my mom and I said, I just can't do it. I just can't do it anymore. And she's like, that's okay. You'll figure something else out. And I decided to choose a lane. And in 2018, I just launched this boutique catering company. I've gone through many names and I'm still fine-tuning it, and I've been really lucky. I'm sort of looking at it from your perspective going, wow, yeah, it's kind of fun to look at it this way. Have had some incredible clients, some celebrity clients, high-end, high ultra-net worth clients. I mean, it is LA. I am in LA, so it's not as shocking as I think I first once felt it was, oh my God. And I've been on several competition shows, and I've been on KTLA's morning news, and I've been a contributing guest chef 4 times. And just Friday, I booked my 5th episode for March. I pitched them the idea for an Oscar watch party using the Best Film nominees as the template for the appetizers of the night. So whatever country or city the best film nominees are from, I took inspired recipes from Frankenstein, Bavaria, Germany, Hamnet, England, F1. I'm doing a cocktail. One battle after another, I'm doing tacos. But it's totally LA and it's all, it's tacos. My goal is to have my own lifestyle, cooking, cultural show and a specialty food shop. And I have this secret desire, which I'll share, is I'd love to have a ranch type farm, small, that where I can incorporate my early childhood teaching skills with a cafe on the premises, a farm that the children can visit, and provide story time and a cafe of like organic foods, Mediterranean foods. And so I started researching what that would look like and teaching again because the private chef world crashed here in LA due to the fires that we had last year and then all the craziness that came before. So lots of restaurants have been closing. It's just been kind of like, okay, I need to go this way and go this way. I just had to be flexible. And I went back to teaching and it's been very rewarding this time around, which has sort of spoken to and enriched my emotional growth, emotional maturity, being back in a teaching environment, being older now. It's been 13 years since I started and I love kids.
How old are your kids now?
They're young adults. My daughter just turned 20 last week and my son is 22.
So they're in school? Did they finish school?
My son is a filmmaker, so he's working on a film. And my daughter is in her second year of college. She's doing a community college program and is applying to Stanford for her last 2 years. She was a ballerina all her life, and she left for Washington, D.C. at 16 to dance with the Washington Ballet. And moved out at 16, lived across the street on her own from the studio, went to DC 5 times that year. It was incredible. So very artistic children, very wise, older than their years. My mom lives with us. We have a dog and a cat.
From what we hear, you always had a backup plan. You're always looking towards the future for a new plan, and you're always knowing that you have to pivot at the last minute and you have no problem with it. You just figure it out. Is that something that you're trying to instill in your kids who, especially if they're into the arts, they might have to pivot when they get older or throughout their life? Is that something that you're trying to teach them just in case?
Absolutely. And it's something that I say to my son all the time. Getting a job bussing tables or at Trader Joe's right now while you're getting your film portfolio together is just a means to an end. It doesn't define you. It just helps you get where you need to go. Definitely with my daughter pivoting from her career, which had been all her life at 17, 18, from leaving dance, finding a new path in academia. And I don't think it's really spoken. It doesn't come out outright, but I think through example, they've seen you just keep trying. You just keep, I hate the word hustling, but you do. You keep going. And it wasn't until I heard self-help person, I think Marie Fiorello, say everything is figure outable, that I realized that was kind of my motto my whole life. I've always been a glass is filling up person, a cockeyed optimist. I've always been that way. I didn't know it until people would say to me, you're so optimistic, you're so positive, you're so open. And I'm like, as opposed to what? It was just so odd to me. And I see how it's hurt me, how I've gotten into hurtful situations because I always believe in the best. But I think at the end of the day, everything is figure outable. Everything is possible. Just like you, Perry. Sorry, I'm going to get emotional. I think that just listening to your story when I watched your video and your eloquence and the way you've carried yourself and proven that your mind is alert and capable and what you're doing Nobody has a right to complain.
Everybody has their own problems. If you dealt a deck of cards and you dealt a hand, you would still take the same hand back because it could always be worse. It could always be different. You approach things oppositely of Perry in some ways. She's very dark.
Very dark.
The glass is never half full, but
I'm a realist.
she's a realist, but she fights it every step of the way. And whenever she gets down and whenever something is blocking where she needs to go, she bulldozes through it. You just give her a cup of coffee and some chocolate and cheese, and then it ignites her. She has energy, and then she just goes. What she accomplishes sometimes in like an hour is incredible.
That's knowing that everything is figure outable. That's
Right.
seeing the obstacles and going, I'm going to take it down. I'm going
Right.
to take care of it.
And I'm also very direct. I get called out quite a bit that I am direct. I think as a woman, especially as a person with a disability, it's worse because if you're too assertive, then people don't want to go near you. You're too much, you're too this, you're too that.
Especially today in the world that we're living in, with all the craziness that's coming out, the Epstein files, however you feel about Trump, he still did what he did. All of this, I've written a book and I'm in my second round of edits, and it's been really hard to get back to finishing it. I think I suffer from analysis paralysis a lot. I think most creative people do. And there was this voice in my head saying, I don't know, sadly, that there'll ever be a wrong time to put out my story. I think sadly, there will always be some sort of pervasive form of abuse where women are still struggling to get out from under somebody's thumb. But for me, it's really important for young, not just girls, but boys and girls to understand and learn respect and autonomy for each other's bodies. And so being back with my 2-year-olds that I'm now with, I began talking about consent to them because they're all over each other. Some 2-year-olds are biting, some they're pushing. And there was a voice in my head that was like, I wonder if this is appropriate with the school program, if they would say anything against it. And then I thought, I'll be the fall guy for this. I'll be the bad guy. And if I do get any slack for teaching consent and boundaries, then okay, good. They need to learn it. If you go in for a hug or if you go in for a kiss and your friend doesn't want one, then no is no. And you have to walk away. So that's really kind of how it comes full circle for me.
For someone who's dealing with so much trauma, whether it be abuse or something else, what would you tell them? What advice would you give them?
How do you get to the other side?
Yeah.
You just have to go through it. You just have to go through it. It's going to be terrifying and it's going to be life altering, but that is what you are there to make happen. As the mom, as the woman, as the mother, you will have to go through it to get to the other side. And there's no other way. I was so terrified in the beginning that there's just no other way to explain the vibration that was going through my body, the energy. It was just terror. Because you're not taught, nobody teaches you what the court system is like. Nobody teaches you legal language, because legalese is very different how they speak in the courtroom. Mediators and Department of Child and Family Protective Services, like the language is totally different. What I learned about myself is that I have a very strong moral compass. And that's what kicked in that night when I left. Through all the crap, I was like, this is wrong and we're done. And I think that was the thread that kept me going despite the terror. There's no other way to describe it. It was terror. And thank God I'm educated. Thank God I'm smart. And these are all the things, by the way, that attract abusive partners. You're a light. The light attracts dark. Dark attracts light. I went through everything with a fine-tooth comb and challenged the court system and lawyers when they presented me with these documents, because the language and what I found out recently, because the story has continued these past 15 years, other developments have happened. And interestingly enough, as a sidebar, the way authorities are looking at these cases now are far more empathetic towards the victim than it was when I came out. It's that out of body experience. It's like looking at the courtroom, which I did many times, is feeling like I was an observer while I was in the courtroom rather than just sitting there and participating, because it was such an out of body experience. And I'm such a learner that I was also sort of mentally taking notes, like, wow, look at what they're saying, how they're interacting. Look at what the judge is saying. Like, it's fascinating. At the same time, it's terrifying. So being your own advocate, you must be your own advocate. So that's kind of where I was saying I kind of found myself again, is that the voice was always there. It's just I had been made to shut it down and made to think that it was unimportant or crazy or not valuable. But that moral compass is what pulled me through. And then these last 15 years, it's been sort of growing into the woman that I am now. I just turned 60 in December, and it's shocking to me. I feel like such a 20-year-old in so many ways.
Tell me about it. I just turned 60, the same thing.
God bless.
Finished college. I know, it's very weird.
And there's a part of me who's like, I am so grateful that I'm here, that I am 60, and that I get to carry what now maybe comes across as confidence, but it's wisdom from experience. I say things now where I just go, you would not have said that so calmly and so confidently, without insecurity, not even a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. There's been incredible growth that I'm so grateful that I am here and that I am this age. Just go through it and believe that it's for the right thing, especially if you have children. It's for the children's sake. And you're changing the trajectory of your family's history. I mean, if you think about, Neil deGrasse says, we are stardust. Like, it's such a miracle that we're here. Things that had to have happened, the collisions that had to have happened for us to be here is a miracle, right? We are stardust. So if you think about it that way, we have to speak up. We have to share our talents. And I have this beautiful quote that I listened over and over again that Steven Spielberg said, that we have to stay in service to our dreams because we have to share them. And I think that is just such a beautiful way to live, so that we're not thinking that we're being egomaniacal or presentational or show off, but I need to stay in service to my dreams and in service to my calling, as you do.